Somebody's willing to do a 5K, a 10K, a half marathon, and a marathon back to back for 3 medals that cost probably $1.85 a piece.
That's what Spartan is doing.
But coach, you don't understand. Then you get to walk around the parks with all these giant medals and you clank. And I saw people do this for years because I was always there that time of year. And I was like, man, I really want to be that guy. Now, when you got to the dopey and you had 5 of those things around your neck, it was causing neck issues walking around because it's so much weight. But it was still the coolest thing I ever did in my life. So
yeah, well, John and I have been talking off the record. We're going to come up with a new program. You're not allowed to drink, you're not allowed to eat food, and you're not allowed to sleep. And somehow we'll be on Oprah Winfrey by next Monday with the most latest and greatest fitness program. It's like the most absurd that you could get. I can't believe that you got duped into, not doped into, but duped into 5K, 10K, half marathon, and a marathon for 3 medals.
You know,
dude, the chat is saying that
Disney should be charged. They should be charged
thing
for
about
making
it
you do
is
that.
that for 4 days in a row, you have to get up at 2:30 in the morning to get to the bus, to have them take you to the start line, to stand at the start line for like damn near 2 hours because you didn't start till 5:30. Then you go run, then you go back, and then of course you're on vacation, so you're naturally going to go out and do vacation stuff, and then you get up and do it all over again. And I mean, like I said, that last year, by the time I got to day 4 of getting up at 2:30 in the morning, I was just done. It was way too much.
Did you have super shoes on too?
No sleep. What?
Did you have super shoes?
The carbon fiber shoes.
I had 2 pairs I rotated.
And if John were to take off a sweatshirt, you'd see his skin just crawling because it's like a physiological debacle is what you've done to yourself.
You know what that is? That is a nightmare.
Yeah, exactly.
That is.
And then John's supposed to, as a physiologist, he's supposed to untangle everything that you tied into a knot. So
yeah, that's what happens when, and then after you finish that, I actually think it's really badass that you did it. I'm not trying to rip you, but afterwards it's a nightmare because now you have a bunch of people that won't train for like 6 months because they're so shot and their body hates them so much. It's like when you don't drink, but once a year and you get so hungover you don't want to drink again. That's what you're experiencing when you finish that.
Exactly.
Look, I'll be really honest. I would not train the rest of the time I was on vacation, which usually was somewhere between like 3 days and a week after that. And then as soon as I came back home, like it was right back to square one.
Okay.
Like,
well,
just start going again. So
honestly, this is like light bulbs going off as far as some promoters. They should do something like this where it's like, hey, you're going to have one race, then you're going to have like a pro race, at least pro time, which is, a 30-minute moto, then have like endurance race of 2 hours, and then the next one of like 4 or something. And then
that's what Mini O's was originally, Johnny. That's what Mini O's was. It was literally a GP, it was a moto, and it was an enduro. That's why they called it Mini Olympics.
I was going to say, it sounds like every amateur race I've been to, you get one sight lap at 4:30 in the morning, and you send it with 40 other people that are just waking up and hope for the best.
Yeah, exactly. That makes a lot of sense, doesn't it?
You practice at 4 a.m, and then you race at noon, so the track is completely different.
Yeah,
but no, Travis, honestly, I didn't know that about you. I didn't.
Yeah, that's savage.
That badass, and I mean that really wholeheartedly. Savage. That I love you. So I'm impressed that you did that.
I don't feel really special. I just feel like I did it, and that was a whole nother time of my life because I haven't done one of those in 5 years now. So
yeah.
Well, it's taking you that long to recover from it. That's the problem.
That's it.
Your blood chemistry is it's still in disarray because of it.
Johnny, I ask, because I got about a half an hour left here. Can I ask John some questions that I came up with last night as I was working till all hours in the morning and thinking about doing this show?
You sure can, but then afterwards, I definitely want your guys' take on the whole taper for training.
Have them do their take, and then I'll ask. Then
okay, we'll John, what do you have a rider do, or cyclist or whoever you're working with for a taper to their big event?
Yeah, it's all sport dependent, and it's all person dependent. I mean, some guys, they only need like 2-3 days, so to speak, taper leading in, depending on volume and everything. I'll give you an example. So I have a couple clients doing the Unbound 200 tomorrow, which is a 200-mile gravel race in Kansas. And that you need a huge taper. You need to, make sure your glycogen stores are up. You do a ton of volume leading into it. So by the time you get to the race, you're super fresh, hopefully, and you can go 10 plus hours hard.
Sorry, what do you mean by that? A ton of volume, like literally a couple days before is when they'll stop the volume, or?
Oh no, like a couple weeks. So, I mean, not a couple weeks. They do a couple weeks of volume. And then they taper in. I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, it's a huge taper where, like, moto, if you're racing at the pro level, there really isn't a taper. I mean, there is, like, the days you travel and whatnot, but there's not like a crazy taper, like you start tapering on Monday type thing leading into Hangtown this weekend. So it's kind of more or less like a steady volume all year. I always tell people you just want to be at 99%, when you race at the professional level. You never want to peak. Everybody always talks about peaking, and it's like all the races pay the same, so there's not a huge value in peaking. So yeah, it just depends on the sport is what I'm trying to say.
Okay. And coach, real quick, tell what you would do for like the moto dude, and then briefly just explain what you want me to do for my Ironman. That's June 8th, that I'm going to try to go to press day, go drop off my bikes, race the Ironman, then try to come back and do press at Lakewood.
Like your style.
So yeah, we'll see if it works.
Pretty much anybody listening, don't do what Johnny's saying he's going to do, because that's the quickest way to undermine your race. No, I mean, to John's point, when you get to race day, the key is just to shed the body of any fatigue. Like John's saying, with a race series that we're dealing with right now, racing from January to October, it's about maintaining fitness. There's not much of a build, unlike an endurance event where you've got, maybe 1 to 3 key events a year that you're really peaking for. You do a big build, like John said, it's going to be predicated off of the distance and the duration of the race, the characteristics and the demands of the race. So all of the training, like for example, if we're doing an Ironman or something of that magnitude, we'll literally do a 3-week taper. If it's a half Ironman, it's a 2-week taper. Anything other than that, you're looking at a 1-week taper. Working with the GNCC group, I think their cadence is perfect. To John's point, it's a long season. And the idea is you race on Sunday, you rest till Wednesday, relatively speaking, train Wednesday to Wednesday, do a 3-day taper, repeat, and do that for the entire year. For yourself, Johnny, and for everybody, the definition of a taper is shedding the body of fatigue. So everybody's got a different level of fitness. Everybody's got a lot of things going on personally or professionally. And that's what makes being a physiologist so much fun, is you've got 25 clients, you have 25 different scenarios you have to deal with. So that's what makes, when you're looking at human performance at the finest, tip of the point, it's looking at the individual, what he or she's got going on personally, professionally, the demands of the race, and then you have to meld all those together. So it's not just a one answer, other than the fact that the definition of a taper is to rid the body of fatigue, and then the rest of it starts to fall into place. You could get into blood chemistry. Like, for example, if we took Trav's blood after doing that dopey, goofy weekend that he did, his blood chemistry would be absolutely all over the place. And so the idea is, when you're looking at shedding the body of fatigue, what you're really doing is looking at the biochemistry of blood to make sure that all the organelles and blood chemistry are optimized. Because think about it, every time you train, you deplete the body at some level, hopefully on a daily basis. You give it enough food and give it enough sleep and enough water that you can sufficiently absorb what you did yesterday, or whatever the training block is, 6, 8, 10, 12, 16 weeks. Definition of overtraining is not absorbing the volume of training that you've done. For some people, that could be 10 hours. For somebody else, it could be 20. But the idea here is, when we decrease the amount of demand on the body, the blood chemistry gets to a higher level of saturation, back to optimized. So when we say shed the body of fatigue, a lot of people think of muscular fatigue. We're looking at muscular fatigue as well as blood chemistry. And like John said, mentally, we want to make sure that all 3 of those engines are coming together at the same time. So there's a lot more on the bone to a very good question. Tapers are tough.
Yeah. And everybody, I mean, Rob, as you know, everybody's so different. Like, some people just can't perform really well on a heavy taper.
Yep.
And some people need a serious taper to perform. I like to taper, like a pretty big taper, especially when I was a ski racer. I would taper quite a bit, more than I do as a cyclist. And I think that's more the weight bearing aspect and the muscle load of the sport. But cycling, you can kind of get away with just not being quite as perfect, just generally speaking, where, yeah, I think like moto, for instance, if you're getting ready, say for like Loretta's or a big race as an amateur, you got to taper pretty good, especially if you factor in the heat and everything else. The taper can definitely make or break your week. Whereas like a really polished endurance athlete who, they can train off of 13 hours, 14 hours and still race at a high level. So it really just depends on the sport.